Hello and welcome to Esri's Public Safety webinar series. What GIS applications do fire service leaders leverage for planning, accreditation, and response? This is another in our webinar series that promotes the use of GIS by public safety agencies, and I want to thank you ahead of time for joining us today. A couple of housekeeping items real quick. We will have a chat window available to ask questions, and we'll try to answer as many questions during the webinar as we can. There will be 3 interactive poll questions, and if you've been on our webinars before, some of these poll questions may seem somewhat repetitive, but again, we use them to gauge or measure the use of GIS in the fire and EMS service, so they're pretty important. There will be a recording of the webinar posted online, and you'll have a link emailed to you. And any relevant links or important links that are relevant will also be emailed to you following the webinar. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about what GIS applications fire leadership has to manage day-to-day operations, to prepare for disasters, or the accreditation process, to build efficiencies into just about any part of fire and EMS service operations, and the fact that a large majority of our municipal fire and EMS agencies already own the applications, or already have access to the applications, and may not even understand that they're available within a city or county government. And we'll also discuss how to get access to these applications when necessary or when you need to. So I am Mike Cox. I'm your Director of Fire and EMS Solutions for Esri, and essentially your fire liaison officer for all things related to GIS. And joining me today, luckily, is Jeff Barani on our public safety team. So Jeff, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, Jeff Barani, I help coordinate operations for our disaster response program and help lead things from a fire and emergency management perspective from a technical sense. Thanks for joining this morning.
No, certainly. Thank you for being here, Jeff. So typically these webinars will involve one of our customer success stories or one of our partners that has taken GIS to improve their response times, to help save lives and property, or just generally build efficiencies into their day-to-day operations. And one example is we recently released a case study involving Johns Creek, Georgia, where they took one of the applications that most on this webinar have access to, an augmented reality mobile application, ArcGIS, and used that application to improve the safety of their responses for water rescue on river and waterways at night. So you can see kind of that screenshot. And this is typically what we would have in one of our webinars, but today's webinar is really going to focus on what do fire departments generally have access to related to GIS platforms, particularly through an enterprise account with us or with Esri. So what is GIS? GIS is a system to integrate, communicate, and analyze data. And it's not just a map, right? It obviously involves geography, it involves a map, but it's really about the ability to measure, analyze, and make decision support capabilities, because we can't improve unless we can measure. So an excellent way to do that, again, whether it's day-to-day operations or some kind of long-term incident, is through the use of GIS, because you can integrate all types of data. So whether it's building data through a computer-aided design, building management data, LiDAR 3D modeling, even records management system or real-time CAD data, and certainly the hundreds and hundreds of data sets you can get through our Living Atlas, whether it's real-time weather, traffic information, all that can be wrapped into one common view, one decision support application that is very flexible in its design, that you set up how you see fit, and you allow or decide who sees what information and when they see it. So it's about getting that right data to the right person at the right time to help them make decisions based on accurate intelligence. And so part of the incredible power of the application of Esri GIS is the fact that most of our partners, most of our public safety agencies, internationally even, but certainly domestically, use the platform for day-to-day operations or for decision support at some point. And so when we look at cities and counties, they may not have a lot of depth or a lot of applications in public safety agencies, but the fact is they're using GIS throughout other city and county agencies. You think about a real estate tax department or a planning department or utilities and infrastructure. They're using GIS every day, and that's why I say that most fire departments, municipal fire departments in the United States, typically have access to it and may not even understand that, just based on the type of contract that's in place. But you can see there over 24,000 cities and local governments over 1,100 national government agencies, and certainly domestically in the U.S., and every federal agency is using it. So we think about sharing data with partners, during a disaster or some significant event. The major players are already using the platform to throughout their operations. So, the systems have been in place for 50 years, and have 85% of domestic public safety agencies are using Esri GIS in day-to-day operations. So that means with your significant responses, when you have to share data with your neighbors or with other agencies, that you're able to do so seamlessly. And so, you think about, you have an event, something significant kicks off, and we share data with our immediate normal day-to-day response partners. So that could be, law enforcement, other fire agencies, state emergency management, state law enforcement. But then you're also able to share with, some atypical agencies, say the federal agencies that might be coming into an expanding incident, or NGOs like the Red Cross, and even non-traditional partners like private industry. So we talk about trying to improve our logistical supply chain, or the ability to use GIS through a FirstNet infrastructure to transmit that data and to be able to communicate incident intelligence to our fellow responding agencies. And it's really, about trying to go from that map on the left, that hand-drawn map with an expanding complex incident or complex problem, to go to the map on the right. And we'll continue to have hand-drawn maps, particularly during that initial attack period, at least for the foreseeable future. But again, with that expanding incident and with that complex incident or complex problem, even looking at things like, homeless issues that are impacting day-to-day responses, or the opioid epidemic that we have to measure and understand how it's impacting our community, you have to be able to move to that web-based map that you can send out and communicate with multiple agencies to help them support your response or your reaction to whatever that incident is, and to support the decision makers. So what you see here is Cal OES's Emergency Operations Center, California Office of Emergency Services, one of the best in public safety GIS implementation. And they're using a couple of things to help support decision making. One of the applications that you likely have access to already is called an operations dashboard. And an operations dashboard, as you can see there, allows you to present information in a structured manner that helps people make decisions. So it's difficult to see, I'm sure, in this slide, but when you walk into this emergency operations center, at a glance, you can understand exactly what's going on. So you can see there's over 190,000 acres on fire. You can see that there's over 990 engine companies deployed. You can see there's over 10,000 personnel on the ground. And I didn't have to stop and get a briefing to understand that. I mean, I could walk in the room and see this visual product and start making decisions as soon as I took a look at that operations dashboard. Another excellent application that is used for this kind of communication of incident intelligence is a StoryMap, and you'll see a couple of examples of those as we go through the webinar. But it allows people to take live mapping products in a web-based view, so you don't have to have any kind of special software, to be able to dig into that data and see what's important to them. So it really turns, what could be some basic data, either paper-based or in a database, it really is a communications platform. And showing here is another operations dashboard that's an interagency sharing of AVL, auto vehicle location data, and CAD data, or incident data, in real time across jurisdictional boundaries. So in this communications platform, it doesn't matter what kind of radio system you're using, it doesn't matter what kind of computer you're using, as long as you have access to connectivity, you can share this data seamlessly with, again, 85% of the public safety agencies in the United States or domestically. And also allowing various levels of security within that, whatever that visual product, whether it's that dashboard or whether it's that story map, you decide who sees what and when they see it. So the view you'll have at the incident command post might be a little more tactical, a little more granular than what they see in the emergency operations center, because obviously incident command is worried about tactics, and the emergency operations center is more a coordination function and may not need that tactical view. That just might be too busy, too much information, too overwhelming for that level of decision making within the emergency operations center. But the point is, these deployments are very flexible. So you, as the agency having jurisdiction, have the ability to filter that data however you see fit, depending on who's receiving the data and who's inputting the data, for that matter. And we work with many, many partners, including multiple CAD companies and other decision support business partners of ours. As an example here is WebEOC, one of their dashboards. This is actually live from the Virginia Department of Emergency Management's Emergency Operations Center, and easily with a plugin or API easily able to generate this operations dashboard. You can see the significance and difference in the views. It's the same data, but with that operations dashboard view, you can see the data in that geospatial context and really help you make decisions more efficiently, quicker, based on that operations dashboard view. And the ability to create web apps that not only we use internally during an event or during an incident, but we use to communicate with the public. And here's an excellent example of using a cloud-based web application, web map, to communicate with the public about evacuation zones. And we often talk with our public safety partners or public safety customers to have the kind of flexible architecture where you can move things to that cloud, to that AGOL, ArcGIS Online, because you need to have that scalability. So as an example, this product from a couple years ago during hurricane season, this product got 40 million hits in 2 days. And a lot of local infrastructure, a lot of local servers may not be able to handle that kind of traffic. So it's important to have that scalability and that flexibility, which Esri ArcGIS provides that in that ArcGIS Online. And in addition to communicating in one direction with the public, the ability to communicate in 2 directions, the ability to have the public able to respond to us or provide data to us. And this is a standing application. This is actually supported by NAPSG, the National Association of Public Safety GIS. And we've seen this application set up at the state level during many storms or significant events, such as wildland issues. But this allows the public, as they take pictures, which they're doing, they're posting things on social media. This allows the public to submit pictures that is geolocated, that gives you a location to show damage. I mean, this is almost like an initial damage assessment. So you see something, you submit it, and you can start sitting in the EOC without sending anybody out, boots on the ground. You can start seeing where this damage is occurring. And so again, it's almost like that initial damage assessment that would actually allow you to start focusing resources on possibly where the most damage is as you start to get that intelligence. And so with that, we're going to go to our first poll question. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jeffrey to give us our first poll question.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So yes, if you could just take a few minutes here and look at this poll question and fill it out, will really kind of help us out and kind of gauge the crowd here, if you will. So the first question is, does your agency leverage demographic data for risk assessment, accreditation, or disaster planning? So the first answer here, my agency does not use demographic data. Second question, my agency uses primarily federal or national level products. And the third answer here is, my agency uses GIS with community level demographic data. So if you could just go ahead and make one of those selections, the best that you see fit, we will use this for our first poll question here. We'll give folks just another minute. So Brenda, if you could go ahead and advance us so we can start to see the results. Okay, well thanks everyone for filling this out. So we see 30% don't use any, 17% use primary federal or national, and 53%, the majority, say my agency uses GIS with community level demographic data. So we appreciate everyone taking the time to fill that out, and with that, we'll turn it back over to you, Chief Cox.
Thank you, sir. Excellent response there. And that's our next area of discussion, is how do we use data that we already have access to, and how do we use data that's available nationally to perform things like our accreditation process or institute community risk reduction efforts. The first thing we do for any community, or for on a regular basis, is we perform a risk assessment. Like what is the risk to our community, and where is that risk, so we can start to address it. So we can pull data from many different resources, our incident or records management system data, CAD data, or public safety answering point, emergency management data, and things of that nature. But to perform, a comprehensive risk assessment, and this one's specifically related to fire, but you think about any risk that you identify, whether it's natural disasters or man-made risk, you can do the same kind of assessment to understand what the impact to your community is a comprehensive risk assessment down to the address point level. And so when you can take parcel layer data. So parcel layer data is typically the data that's used for real estate tax collection. So you think about if you work in a community that collects taxes, you have access to data at that parcel layer that will give you information on every single structure in your locality. And when I say give you information, it can be significant information, pretty in-depth. Things like not only how big it is, how many stories, but what's the roof structure, what what kind of heating system is in it? Does it have a basement? Things that not only increase the risk to the occupants, but increase the risk to our firefighters as they respond to it. And to be able to take that data and do a risk assessment on every single address point and assess or assign a risk level to every single structure allows you to make decisions even before an alarm comes in. It allows us to dispatch the appropriate number of resources based on a good job task analysis. In addition to that, you can start to add your demographic data that is pretty granular. So we provide a significant amount, much more than just say, the census data you might see, down to a block by block level almost, and we're going to have a good demonstration about this soon. The one up here is we're showing currently is our Tapestry layer, and this is San Diego Fire's first 2 areas overlaid over Tapestry. So you think about being a fire captain or battalion chief and understanding who is in your first due. So we understand where the risk is, we understand where the target hazard occupancies are, and then who is there. So you can start to see, not only high risk populations, the very old, the very young, but also just general behaviors. How do they move about day to day? What is their lifestyle really like? And that's what Tapestry can do for you. And that's just one example, again, of the hundreds and hundreds of data sets that we're able to pull for this kind of analysis for a community risk assessment. And then be able to take that data and operationalize it. So I tell this story quite often that, before we did that address point risk assessment during our accreditation process, we were sending the same amount of resources to an 800 square foot bungalow that we were sending to, a 5,000 square foot McMansion with a rural water supply issue. We were sending the same number of resources to a convenience store that we were sending to a 35,000 square foot big box store, which if you think about a good job task analysis, that's ridiculous. So we were able to take that risk assessment and actually assign a level of risk to each structure in our locality, and then actually input that into our CAD system, into our dispatch system. So as soon as that 911 operator verified an address, we already knew what the risk level was, and we could adjust our dispatch recipe based on that risk level. And it literally changed the way we did business. So it was a pretty impressive way to impact our day-to-day responses for structure fires. And also, it took no boots on the ground. We did the entire analysis based on that parcel layer I was describing. So once you have that workflow in place, you can repeat it. We repeated it every couple of weeks to make sure we were catching new structures, and it was done on every structure. So it wasn't just commercial. We did that assessment on every residential structure as well. So it was, again, impacting every address point in our locality. And that workflow can be seen in our target hazard analysis. And it's the ability to take that parcel day, again, not putting anybody on the street to do a target hazard analysis in person. Obviously, we're still going to do pre-plans, and that has to be boots on the ground for that. But to be able to analyze these structures with an off-the-shelf workflow that allows us to identify what are the highest risk occupancies in our highest risk structures in our locality, and you can apply that to, again, every address point to determine what level of risk we're responding to day to day. And with that, we'll go to our next poll question. So I will turn it back over to Jeff.
Great, thanks, Chief. So the next question here for you all to fill out is your agency sharing a GIS-based common operating picture outside your agencies? So in this case, we're just trying to get an assessment of the level of data sharing or not, and what's going on in your jurisdiction. So the first answer, my agency provides paper map products only. Second answer, my agency uses GIS map products within our agency only. The third answer here is we use web-based GIS maps for our agency and share regionally. And then finally, we are not using GIS for our location-based needs. So if you can just take a second here and select one of the answers for our poll questions, that will really help us out and get a better assessment of the audience and the use in the market. So.
Yeah, generating that web-based GIS instant intelligence is incredibly important to be able to share with those outside agencies.
Great, excellent. Yeah, no, good looking answers here. So yeah, thanks to everyone for filling this out. So just a few of you are using paper maps only or are not sharing information. We see, some use of GIS, within agencies, and then more importantly, the biggest answer there was, in sharing regionally. So with that, we thank everyone for filling that out, and back to you, Chief.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks. And that, again, as we discussed early on, the ability to share that data during significant events, and if you can kind of institutionalize it in your day-to-day operations, even internally, that certainly makes it much easier when the big incident hits. So we'll move along to performance measures, and very important to the accreditation process, but even just to manage day-to-day operations, to have your command staff understand what's occurring at the street level every day. This is our Chief's dashboard. It's in our, it's one of our off-the-shelf solutions that's on our solutions page, which we'll show you in just a few moments. But this is the kind of thing that you could download and start adding your CAD data or records management system data and start seeing results today. You could actually start using this today. So this provides, not only average times, but you can drill down to the individual company. You can drill down to a certain area on the map. You can filter by call type. So say I just want to look at EMS calls, or I just want to look at brush fires or things of that nature. So it's all about what data you put into it and how you can filter it. This one in particular has it on the left there, it just pulls out the longest 10 or so incidents with the longest response time. So say a battalion chief could address those calls, or could actually investigate and say, hey, what took so long to get to this call? And being able to take these operational assessments, these performance measures, and displaying it again so your decision makers can address any performance issues, and also you can start using it for that continuous improvement through the accreditation process. And here's an application called Insights, a powerful analytics tool that also gives you that geospatial map component in this view. But here's one that we put together with actual CAD data from a locality that in one view you can see unit hour utilization, but it's filtered out by call type. It's filtered out by districts. So not only do you see what is the busiest unit, but we can see what is the busiest district, or we can see what units are responding into a district. So it's a pretty good way to measure unit hour utilization, ERF, total response time. How is our turnout time? Turnout time is always an issue. And the thing is, once you make these products, and you can get a workflow where they're updated regularly, you can then pipe this into every fire station so that every firefighter can have access to the data, can perform their own, or have their own decision-making process based on this product that you provide them into the fire station. And here's a story map. And again, we talked about CalOS previously. This is a tab story map. You'll see them scroll also, so kind of a different application. But to be able to come in, the map on the left is an overview of the entire state, so I get a big picture, a broad scope picture of what's going on. But I may likely only need certain amounts of that information. So what the story map allows me to do is to click on a certain tab, look at one particular wildland fire, and then drill down into that fire and see exactly what's going on. So that data may be specific to me and my decision-making needs, and it allows me to do so all within the same product, all on the same web page. Again, with no special software, all I need is a link sent to me in an email, and I can have access to this. Using mobile applications in the field has been incredibly impactful. The ease of use continues to increase. The ability to generate an app, to create your own applications for things like damage assessment, for things like search and rescue. We've got departments that are doing mobile applications like this on a phone, tablet, or NDC for their daily apparatus checks. That automatically notifies a fire shop or maintenance person if it's needed, for drug box inspections day to day. So I mean, it's limitless. It's so flexible to be able to put together one of these survey 1, 2, 3 applications is what you're viewing here. And then of course collector is used quite often as well for damage assessment and wildland response. This was actually an IMT out of Colorado that had come to the East Coast for one of the hurricanes, and they had just-in-time training just before their operational period started. I actually called them in the hotel lobby, and we sat down and they ran through how to use survey 1, 2, 3 to collect information for the NAPSG and International Fire Chiefs search and rescue tool that was supported obviously by IFC, but this allowed the integration of hundreds of responders data, multiple teams at the state, local, and federal level. So we had FEMA, USAR data integrated into one view. And I know it's very difficult to see, but there's 100,000 data collections in this map from Michael and Bay County and Panama City, Florida. And very quickly you can look at that and see that there was 2,000 victim contacts. They've done over 46 or 45,000 damage assessments. But again, you can drill down, you can filter it. If you zoom in on the map, you're only seeing the data and the analytics for what you've got within view of the map. So very easy to filter the information, then see what you need to see, provide that information to the decision makers, and tell your story about what the response is. It allows you to see where most activity is, see where possibly we need to focus resources, or do a little system status and transfer some folks around. But again, all these agencies, multiple agencies, feeding data into one view, so that you get this in local command post, the task force leader, you get it in the local EOC and the state emergency operations center, all the way up to FEMA, where they're viewing the same data, and it prevents duplication of effort. Another unique or new capability that you'll see more and more was the ability to track resources in real time, which obviously adds to the safety of our responders, and also provides this breadcrumb trail. So we basically, that same IFC search and rescue application, we've taken all the other, or cut off all the other layers. This is just tracking. So the gray dots you see there are actually where those task forces were operating. So when we talk about doing damage assessment or search and rescue, or say we've done protect in place, you can see where these response units have been. And if you're planning for the next operational period, that prevents you from doing a duplication of effort. So we've already done damage assessment in this neighborhood. You can see that. You can see when they were there, and you click on the dot, you can see who it was, what time of day it was, how fast they were going, what direction they were traveling in. It's a lot of in-depth information to provide you. And again, in addition to that, provides real-time location as well. So you think about sitting in the command post and being able to track your personnel as they go throughout a search and rescue operation is pretty vital. And on the backside of that survey 123 provides analytics off the shelf. So this is the kind of export you can get. And again, this is flexible too. You can configure it how it's needed. But if you're trying to answer questions, if you're trying to brief elected officials or up your chain of command, think about having just with a click or two away. Yes, we had 2,079 victim contacts. We did 49,000 damage assessments, and that's there in real time. So every time somebody hits submit, from one of these devices, whether it's a phone or a tablet, all your information is being updated. Your maps being updated in real time. So we're not putting 12-hour-old information at the end of the operational period where somebody comes back and hands you a disconnected device or does a report, a briefing on what they've done. As soon as they take the action and they hit submit on the device, you're getting that information on the map and in this analytics profile where you can start making good decisions based on that data. And our last poll question, I'll turn it over to Jeff once again.
Great. For our last poll question here, is your agency deploying mobile applications in the field to collect demographic data? So first answer here, we are not currently performing data collection. Second answer, we receive data from an outside agency and manually updating. And then finally, we use field mobile apps to collect and update data in real time. So if you can pick one of these answers here for us in our poll, that will close out here our last poll question. So we'll give folks just another minute here. And Brenda, let's go ahead and look at the results. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah, so it looks like more and more we're seeing jurisdictions and everyone on the phone and the webcast today saying that they do use mobile apps in the field to collect data in real time. So that's great to see that, things kind of trending that way. And with that, Chief Cox, back to you.
Thanks, Jeff. So what's next? What do we see coming down the pipeline? What capabilities are we developing that can help you in your day-to-day operations or during significant responses? One of the projects we're associated with is NMAS, the National Mutual Aid System, developed by the International Association of Fire Chiefs. We partnered with them and Javari, who is the web EOC provider, to provide a national mutual aid system that is based in GIS that allows you to quickly request resources based on their location on a map. So in other words, you'd be able to go into this system and say, I need 5 engine strike teams, and you could be able to see on the map where the closest engine strike teams are, whether they're in service or not based on their locality, having them available to deploy, and then be able to actually request them electronically and have them respond to you electronically. So it's no more phone tree, it's no more, making 50 phone calls to try to find a swift water team. You can look in the system and see who's got a swift water team available and make the request right there. Certainly if you want some additional information on that, you'll have my email at the end of this, and you can give me an email or shoot me an email, and I'll set up either a demo or a quick call with the IFC personnel. Another exciting application that we will see in 2020 is what we're calling ArcGIS Mission, and it's the ability to quickly create a mission to bring in responders, outside agencies even, and start this mission management. So to be able to start tracking personnel on the ground with our tracker application, to be able to generate assignments and provide those assignments electronically, not just over the radio. and actually peer-to-peer connectivity, even when you lose broadband. So as long as you got a mesh net or something like that up, to be able to have, you know, a device at one search team and then another search team adjacent. And when I mark up the map on my device, even outside of broadband connectivity, they would see the changes on their map as well. And also that tracking, so I can see where they are, again, even without that connectivity. So we're very excited about ArcGIS Mission. One of the ones I mentioned at the beginning when I was talking about Johns Creek, Georgia, is ArcGIS, which Augmented Reality application, which we're seeing more and more operational applications of this app during significant events. And we talked about the swiftwater rescue and the ability to tag significant features like on a waterway, so you can avoid those and it's safer for the firefighters. This was an actual response of Israelis USAR team to a Brazilian dam failure several months ago. And it's difficult to see, but the right-hand side of the slide there's actually a full-size traco. So that gives you some perspective on what the scale of this is. And so they went to this dam failure where there was, you know, multiple people missing in this debris field, and they were actually able to take the last cell phone pings, the last broadband pings, and with an XY coordinate and put it in this ArcGIS application. So imagine you're looking through a phone or a tablet across this field, and ArcGIS is putting this data in your view. And so what those pop-ups are, those are where cell phone pings were last hit. So in other words, you're walking through a field with a phone or a tablet, and you can walk right up to one of those and say, okay, here's one, start looking. At the bottom left of that larger picture, all those blue dots, those are actually cell phone pings. So again, to be able to walk around and look for whatever data you put into it, so whatever layer you're putting into it, would allow you to do that. And more 3D modeling. It's somewhat difficult to see here. This was an actual exercise we participated in, or supported rather, at FDNY in New York. Their Special Operations Command simulated an explosion in the subway tunnel, and we were actually, one of our partners, Leica, we went to support and provide 3D modeling of the tunnel. So they had a backpack mounted LiDAR scanner, walked a responder through the tunnel, you know, taking this scan, and within minutes in the command post, you could actually fly through the tunnel virtually and see everything that occurred in the tunnel, even though it was almost completely, you know, no visible light in the tunnel as they went through. In addition to that, you can see we've got 3D building models or 3D building layers on top of where the tunnel is, and the white symbology there is field data collection, either with our collector application or our Survey 123 application. So you're going to see more and more integrated data delivered to the command posts in an efficient manner, quickly, within minutes and not hours, to help folks make decisions during significant responses. So we're pretty excited about all these capabilities that are coming, and most of which you have access or will have access to in an EA account with us. So most cities and localities, as these are baked into that, will have access to these capabilities. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff so he can do some actual demonstrations of some of these applications that you do have access to already. So Jeff.
Great. Well, thanks, Chief. So good morning again, everyone. So what we're looking at here is ArcGIS Online. So I've logged into my ArcGIS Online account, and I want to give you a tour of some of the capabilities and apps that come along with a part of that, and then what are some of the things you can do with this from a fire service perspective. So the first thing I want to look at here is a pre-plan example. So in this case, I'm looking at a map, you know, over the web, and it's got, you know, some of the CAD drawing data for reference here, and we're looking at some of the pre-plan information that's already kind of been, you know, kind of collected. So a web map is really kind of the modern way with which we, you know, work with things these days from a modern web GIS perspective, and that's really what we're looking at. And the key thing here is, you know, web map can be used by a variety of different devices in a variety of different ways. So one of the tools that I can use that's a part of your ArcGIS Online subscription is Collector for ArcGIS. So this is an app that will either run on your tablets, my laptop as I've got here, or can even run on your smartphones. And the idea here is we can use this as a data collection mechanism to start, you know, filling out information from the field. So in this case, this can be data from a a pre-plan perspective. So if we're going out and looking at a building and figuring out, where the hazardous materials are located, with a couple of quick clicks here, I can start to fill out, this information. I can even associate, photos with this data. And, once I'm done with my, collect, I can go ahead and submit that, and that'll either get sent to the cloud or our servers, on site. And really what this allows us to do is then be able to, quickly have a way to see some of the information that's been, collected, including the photos that kind of go along with it. So in this case, this could be used for pre-planning information. This could just as easily be used for other aspects of a fire service business, like, fire hydrant inspection, home safety checks, damage assessment, search and rescue, as Chief Cox, laid out, before. So it's really kind of a different way of, thinking about and using, GIS, using some of the modern capabilities, leveraging both, mobile technology as well as the cloud. Next, in my next example, we want to think about, doing analysis, in the cloud here and using ArcGIS Online. So let's say, for example, that we're evaluating a potential new station here. Maybe there's a new property that became available to the fire department, and we want to look at, okay, what's some of the analysis that would go along with it. So, for example, from a drive time perspective, where can I get in 4 minutes from this potential station? And, with just a couple of clicks here, I can go ahead and run this analysis. So I don't have to be in the desktop software to run these tools. I don't have to be, a GIS guru to really kind of understand some of the capabilities here. With just a couple of quick clicks here, I can then, leverage the cloud to help us perform this analysis to look at, what are the 4-minute drive times, based on NFPA standards from this, potential, new station. And then, this really will allow us to better understand, how acquiring, this property may, better help with our response times and our, jurisdiction. So that's, so it's just taking a sec to draw here, and then here we go. This is the results of our analysis. So this purple polygon here, this purple blob, represents, where we can drive within 4 minutes from this, particular, station. The same type of idea, works in a rural sense as well. So if in this case, if we switch to, Montana, for example, and we wanted to do the same type of analysis and look at, a drive time analysis, not from a drive time perspective, but what's the 5-mile drive distance here from this particular station. The same kind of things, apply, and can go ahead and run the analysis in the same, way. And so the main thing that we wanted to kind of convey here is, in some cases, you don't always have to go to GIS staff now these days to help perform, this type of analysis. This represents, some of the types of capabilities from an analytic perspective that can be performed in the ArcGIS Online, environment to really help you with your kind of mission needs, based on some of the requirements that you have. So we realize that in many cases, GIS staff may be, quite busy and tied up with other tasks, and maybe there's not GIS staff assigned to the fire department. And we wanted to give you the sense that, you've got capabilities at your fingertips to be able to do this, on your own. So in this case, now I can see the 5-mile drive distance from this particular, property near your Whitefish to give us a sense of where the drive distance is from this jurisdiction. Moving on here, kind of in our tour of apps here, we wanted to look at things from a target hazard perspective. So in this case, we're using the StoryMap app, one of the apps that comes with your ArcGIS Online subscription, to show the results of some target hazard analysis that was performed. So in this case, we had a GIS analyst look at the building parcel data, the building footprint data, and take into account, several factors from a fire service perspective that really kind of make up our target hazard analysis. In this case, fire flow, occupancy type, life safety, building area height and width, as well as economic impact. And those calculations were run on the GIS desktop and then published and kind of lifted or operationalized to the cloud. So now others inside the agency can have access to this information. So in this case, we're looking at the overall results. We can see, some of the high areas for, obviously downtown as well as a convention center. But we can also look at the different factors that made up the components of this analysis. So in this case, building area, building height, fire flow, economic impact, and the like. And in this case, it's been run both on residential structures as well as, commercial. This kind of, template or methodology is based on a couple of factors here. Certainly, other elements could be, added in, and Chief Cox has shared, in the past how they've added in things like the last time that the property sold, because that would indicate the last time that the smoke detector would be installed for the like. So certainly flexible from an analytic perspective, but we see that the StoryMap is a great way to start to bring in the results of this type of analysis and present it in an understandable way. We can start to operationalize this in other ways using apps like the operations dashboard. So in this case now, this gives a more kind of interactive, view of that same type of data that we looked at just a second ago with target hazard. So as I zoom in and move around, I can see the average, target hazard score by what's in view. I can see, the top different properties, based on the analysis. In this case, the San Diego Convention Center that we looked at, just a second ago. And I can also slice this and dice this in other ways. So, for example, if I want to look at what's the average, target hazard score by a particular fire station, I can, in their first due district, I can start to look at that here by flipping through some of these elements here inside the operations dashboard. So again, the operations dashboard is one of the configurable apps that come with the ArcGIS Online subscription that many of you probably already have access today, that you can start to configure or work with staff to get apps like this configured to meet your mission needs. Next, moving on, we want to get into insights. So this is an additional analytic tool that you may add on to your subscription. So in this particular example, we're looking at a demonstration scenario of looking at 1 year's worth of call data from San Diego. So this is sample data that we got. It's not representative of their actual performance, but this represents the results of analysis that a fire data analyst has performed already. And so the first kind of tab here, we're looking at call volume by district. So based on the different stations, we can see what's the average kind of call time. As Chief Cox mentioned earlier, one of the recent analytic functions that's been added into the Insights tool is the ability to look at the 90th percentile performance of the data. So in this case, we're looking at the turnout time, and what's been done here is we can see that 97 seconds here, based on this sample analysis, was the 90th percentile performance of turnout time, and we can look at how each of the different first due districts did on this particular analysis, as well as look at on a unit by unit basis, how did each of these units perform in these areas. And this is an analytic environment that pretty quickly we can start to use the concept of cards to build in the type of analysis here. So not only are we looking at, we can see kind of the map results of the 90th percentile performance, on a district by district basis. We can also see the response times by kind of time of day and day of week in this chart here. So turnout times is one of the tabs here. We can also look at total response time, both first due and effective fire force across the entire jurisdiction. Again, we can slice and dice this up. We can also use this to perform analysis and looking at unit hour utilization across the district based on the time the unit was dispatched to the time the call was closed, and then looking at that over the kind of the course of the year. So in this case, we're kind of looking at the results kind of after we have perform this particular analysis. But what I want to show you here is just really quickly, this is the type of environment where we can start to pull this data together. So there's two main data sets here that we have access to help perform this analysis. We've got the kind of the GIS layer, if you will, of the engine districts, as well as the performance, the data. Essentially, we got an export out of the RMS system to look at the call data. So obviously, we have the location as well as different fields inside this data for the time the call was picked up, the time it was closed, etc. And we can use this then to really kind of start to look at the performance. So, here's obviously the various mathematical operations that we can perform, on this data set. And the element that was added in the recent release was the 90th percentile analysis. So allowing us to now calculate this information on the fly to be able to get to that type of information. And then we may operationalize the results of that data here, again, in something like the operations dashboard. So in this example, we've gone ahead and published the results from our analysis and insights and built now a dashboard that shows us the 90th percentile performance against some of this information. Obviously, this is kind of looking at things from a historic perspective, year over year. We have seen agencies start to look at, kind of trying to build a real-time dashboard of this type of information. So what's the dispatch time or turnout time, looking at the past, 2 weeks or 7 days, or depending on how they want to look at that. And then we can, compare that against, benchmarks that we have set up for our jurisdiction to see how our performance is doing. And certainly, if we want to look at filtering this, on a station-by-station basis to see how, Station 8's doing, versus, Station 12, that's certainly things that we can, easily do to set up, as a part of this, and share this with others in our jurisdiction so they'll be able to look at that, particular performance. So let's go get another one. Next, kind of moving on, and these are some of the things that Chief Cox mentioned, at the beginning. There's a wealth of demographic data that's available and accessible to you through the platform. So one of the additional apps that is available is the Community Analysts, app here. So in this case, I'm looking at, the entire, service area for the the fire department here, and I can just simply click on this, and with just a couple of clicks, start to get just a ton of information for us with various, different, infographics. So in this case, key facts, total population, average, household income. But there's many different, ways that we can, look at, in this case, our entire jurisdiction. You can certainly, split this up and look at, a particular first due area, especially if you're having a problem and you're trying to look at, different elements of the demographic data, based on that area. So in this case, looking at, population and some of the languages that are spoken and all that, we've, in a really kind of quick, understandable way, I can get a sense from the at-risk population for our area that's served. Another, then there's many different types of reports here, and hundreds, if not thousands, of variables that are available to us. So in this case, we're looking at what we call our Tapestry segmentation. So this isn't, astrology or anything like that. This is based on real science and real data to look at several different factors to give, a sense of the types of people that are living in your jurisdiction. So in this case, the top Tapestry segment, came out as metro, renters, median age of 32, different, characteristics of this, kind of demographic profile, if you will. And this allows us, kind of at a glance to be able to see this rich type of demographic data to give us a better sense of our makeup. And oftentimes it can really kind of provide a data-driven way to characterize, jurisdictions that may oftentimes really kind of supplement your instincts and your knowledge of the jurisdiction. Now we can use, data in this case to really characterize this, type of information and have this, be shared. So we just wanted to kind of give you a sampling, on today's webcast of some of the different, kind of capabilities that are out there and available, some of the different tools and apps that many of you may have, access to directly to today through your existing enterprise agreements with Esri. Your city, your jurisdiction may already have, an agreements with Esri where you may have access to these tools and may not even, be aware of it. Finally, here in closing, one of the things that we wanted to mention is we have a series of solution templates for the fire service that really allow, kind of quick ways to kind of get started. So if you search here, go to solutions.arcgis.com, click on local government, and then browse to the fire service collection here. We see ways and templates that help you get started quickly. And perhaps this represents, a 70, 80%, type of solution. The dashboard for looking at, calls for service as we showed earlier, or developing pre-plans, traditional things like fire station wall maps and the like, or run books. Looking at, using the mobile tools to inspect fire flow or conduct fire safety surveys. Special events, and that's certainly a growing, area for sure. So we just wanted to highlight this particular area to, if you aren't using some of these tools today, perhaps this website gives you a place to have a conversation with either your GIS staff or the people that provide, GIS for your jurisdiction, and give you a place to kind of get started with many of the capabilities that you've seen today. And note that this is a growing list of templates. Well, this is something that we're looking to add to over time. We'll see more tools for accreditation, over the next year that will get added to this collection, as well as other areas of business for the fire service. So with that represents kind of the quick tour from a demonstration perspective. And Chief Cox, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, excellent demonstration there, Jeff. I certainly appreciate it. We have a few questions, and Jeff, I'm going to throw a couple at you as well, because I think you can answer them better than I can, because obviously you're smarter than I am. But so we had one question about integrating drone or UAS imagery into the platform, which we have a couple ways to do that. But I know one of the primary is our drone to map application. Do you have anything you could add to that, Jeff?
Yeah, so a couple things there. So we have another tool, we didn't show it today, called Drone to Map, that takes essentially the still photos that were, taken from the drone and can stitch all of those together and not only provide kind of the ortho base map of the imagery that was collected, it also can provide some analytic products to go along with it. It kind of does the math automagically for you and allows you to create the elevation model as well as, point cloud if that's something that you're, looking for. So even if it's a GoPro camera that's on a drone, those images can be stitched together using our Drone to Map tool. There's another element called full motion video. So if there is real-time video coming in from a drone, I think that the fancy term is with MISB compliant metadata, which basically means it's got the time data and location data encoded in the video format, and that's another way that we can, pull that, into a mapping app. I'm using our full motion video technology. So those are a couple of ways with which we can leverage data from drones and UASs.
Excellent. So another is back to the pre-plan demonstration. Do the icons scale on the pre-plan when you zoom in and out on a building?
So the question is, do icons scale? So there's a couple of different ways that we can configure this. We can basically set up different renderings at different scales so they should draw appropriately. Maybe if we're zoomed out to a jurisdiction level, we may just want to indicate that the pre-plan exists for that particular building, and then when we're zoomed in tight at like the building level, we can have the larger icons kind of show up. So there's definitely ways to change the size of the icon based on the level of map that you're looking at.
Excellent. And then the last one I'm going to discuss with you, Jeff, and then we'll any of the questions that were not answered on the webinar, we will email you directly and get you any of the questions or support you may need. But had a question about, was the ArcGIS Mission application for on-scene incident management, and that is certainly one of the capabilities, correct, Jeff? That it's for, it can get pretty tactical, pretty task level.
Yeah,
with
the
that
use
mission.
case, the use case from that definitely comes from the military environment, looking to bring that over onto the civilian side, and definitely very tactical, looking at making assignments, having teams work together and communicating on a device basis, not necessarily based on an internet or cell connection. So
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So upcoming events for us specific to fire and EMS would be our CPSE, Center for Public Safety Excellence webinar, which is actually August 28th, 11 a.m. Eastern. And we're going to address technology to support the accreditation process. And we'll have several of our customers, including Orland Park Fire District, that's recently used some pretty good applications that you've seen some demonstrations of today, but specific to their accreditation process. So we're excited about that. You'll have our emails, both Jeff and I email to you and after the webinar here. So if you have any additional questions that maybe you did not get in the chat box, you can email us. And here's my email there is Mike_Cox@esri.com. But again, any of the questions we didn't address prior to the end of the webinar, we will certainly engage those afterwards. But I want to thank everyone for attending, and certainly I enjoyed it. Jeff, thanks for your help, and Brenda Martinez in the background there, thank you as well. So hope everyone has a good day. Thanks again.